You're listening to the Listing a Week podcast, a podcast that teaches real estate agents how to generate a listing a week and grow their business. My name is Todd Tramonte, and I'm a Dallas, Texas-based real estate broker, author, radio host, team leader, and real estate coach. And I'm sitting down with my team of agents to talk about how they generate a listing a week or more, the lessons they've learned, and how they differentiate in a noisy real estate industry, and how you can too. What's up, party people? Welcome to another Listing a Week podcast. It's been an exciting summer. We've been a little spotty with the podcast this summer, but that's okay. Hopefully you've checked those out on iTunes and got on the YouTube channel and caught not only the Dual Threat podcast, but also the Listing a Week podcast and all of our other educational videos over there. We've got an interesting one for you today. We haven't gone this route yet. We've kind of teased that we would. Most of you that listen to the podcast, see us on social media and YouTube, know that not only do we have the Listing a Week training program, but we also have the Buyer a Week training program. We are going to talk about the listing side of the business and getting more listings today on the show, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the buyer side. Couple of ways. Number one, we have got two of our world-class, absolutely incredible home buyer specialists from the Todd Tramonte home selling team with us in the studio today. And they're going to talk about two sides of the business. Number one, what it looks like when they are on the other side of a transaction from a really great listing agent. And then also what it looks like to pick up a buyer a week or so in their businesses. So we've got Megan Crow in studio. We'll swing the mic over and get a hello.
Hello.
There you go.
Professional.
Then we have
Megan.
D. Avid Goss. It's D. Avid. When David started on the team, he pronounced what we all do and what we're all licensed to do as realtor. So we thought we would go ahead and add a syllable to his name also. So D. Avid Goss, welcome to the studio.
Welcome. Hello.
As is almost always the case, we have the English wonder, the king of cricket, one might say,
Exactly.
Ian Daniels, or as pronounced correctly, Jan Daniels. Welcome
Incorrect.
to the studio.
Incorrect, but close.
Nailed it on that one.
Yep.
He often says things that aren't true. It is Jan Daniels. Welcome to the Listing a Week podcast. Let's get right into it, and let's start with D. Avid. Some say David. We say D. Avid.
Let's go.
Give me like one or two things. No restriction really on time, but just talk to me about how do you know when you have a buyer client and on the other side of the transaction is actually a really good listing agent?
It usually starts with communication. I mean, if I know my client's interested in a house, I right away call that agent and try to get more information from them. And if they're responsive, then I know it's got a chance to be a good transaction. If they don't call me back for 24, 36 hours, I'll send them an email, I'll send them a text. But once they start communicating, if I can get them to wake up, that'll start the process.
So here's the crazy thing. So if you're tuning in and you're here because you want to be a more powerful, more aggressive, more productive, what we call marketing specialist, what most people call listing agent, maybe you work both sides, but you're just trying to do more listings. What David just told you, and I agree 100%. Anybody here disagree with that? Nope. I agree 100%. Nope. Step one, if you simply if you call people back, then David does 30 to 50 buyers a year, right? Depending on honestly what he wants to do that year. So a really great, consistently productive buyer specialist here is saying that the first sign of a great agent is that you follow up. You call people back. So that should be music to your ears. If you're an agent wanting to really thrive in the listings, at a minimum, if you'll just call people back and actually do what you say, most really great buyer side agents will view you as a better agent, as a top-notch agent.
And even if you can't call back immediately, just send a quick text or something to say, I will call you back. Like the biggest frustration that I hear over and over and again when people call us on our team is I have tried 19 times to call this person over the last 4 days, and not a single one has returned a call from me.
And what you don't say, though, and you guys can gut check me on this, is I'll call you after work because my work is not real estate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We don't do that.
I get out of work at 5:30. I'll call you then. Wait, which work are we talking about right now, right? All right, so Megan's here with us, too. What else? What happened other than literally just like replying to you, which is sadly like a low bar. But if you do that, folks, you'll put yourself in position to succeed. What else for you as a buyer specialist indicates that other agent is better than average?
So, especially in the last few months, I've had experiences where some agents are working to build a relationship with me. And of course, you want to fight as hard as you can for your clients, but you also don't want to fight the other agent, because if we're fighting against each other, it just makes the transaction really hard. Because there's going to be things that happen or things that go wrong. And if we're not working together as a team to help the seller and the buyer, it's just not going to go well.
So the sign of a great agent is one that actually puts in the work to like build some rapport with you and some trust with you, right?
Yes.
And that, again, if you're tuning in because you want to step up your game and you want to take more listings or more buyers, and this sounds like ridiculously oversimplified, I'm with you. But the fact is, at a foundational level, this makes a big difference. David and Megan sell lots of buyers. Both of them are going to go way beyond 6 figures of income, purely working with buyers this year, cherry picking the ones they want to work with and passing on lower price point, more annoying, difficult, challenging, right? So they're in the sweet spot of what most people beg to be in. And they're telling you that if you're a listing agent and you will call back and make an effort to work together and be kind and respectful and professional and friendly, then they will then view you already as a top tier agent. They haven't gone to check your annual production yet. They've said, hey, he called me back and she was responsive and kind and willing to say, hey, I understand what you're saying. Let me check on that. Totally get it. That's an absolutely fair request. Let me go see what I can do, right? None of this is like brilliant scripting and strategic. Now, we'll get into some of that too. But if you'll do these foundational things, you can be more successful. And let me just piggyback. I know Ian's got a comment, but let me piggyback on what Megan said. If those agents do that and you run into them again 6 months from now, what's the likelihood that you're going to want to do business with them then?
So just recently, I can't remember, it was Terry McCoy. David had worked with an agent, and Terry had such an awesome experience with him that when she knew that I worked on the same team, she, I think, was more likely to accept our offer. So even though I didn't work with her directly, she worked with somebody on our team, so she trusted that I was a good agent that was going to get the deal done. And going forward, she said, I hope I get to work with y'all again. Y'all are amazing.
That's awesome.
So,
I hadn't heard that story, so I like hearing that live on the podcast here. So to clarify, if someone didn't know the names and the roles, David had brought one of his buyers to this agent's listing and did a deal, and it went really well. Then Megan brought a different buyer to the same agent, a different listing of that same agent, and she was excited to see the team name. And then obviously Megan delivered, and was professional as well. And she's like, great, another awesome agent from that team. And the subconscious or even the conscious but kept to herself comment was, I would rather accept an offer from them than someone else because I don't know what I'm going to get with these other people. And I know that probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, I'm going to get drama. And with this team, agent and staff behind them, I'm going to get a smoother, better deal. Perfect example. Now, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to kind of just piggyback a little bit on what Megan was saying on just the responsiveness piece of it.
Right.
But one of like the major things that that our buyer agents are so happy to hear, and it's something that we train our marketing specialists on, right, is when a buyer agent says, hey, what would it take for me to get this offer?
Right.
And the listing agent doesn't just respond with, I don't know, just send me your best.
Yeah.
Right? But actually says, well, this would be useful, and this would be useful, and this, and this, and this lease back.
This is my seller's situation.
Right. I mean, like, just giving some information. A, that's in the best interest of your client if you're a marketing specialist.
Right.
And B, like, our buyers want to know this stuff so they can give you the offer that you're wanting to get.
Especially in a market with low inventory or even stable inventory. Like, let's work together and see if everyone can be happy.
But let me throw it out to David and Megan. How many agents that you ask that question to truly respond with some good information that will help you write your offer?
Again, it just depends. I like to call that agent pretty quick and build rapport.
Right.
You know, before I even make an offer, I know not to make
Key
blind
point,
offers.
writer downer, key point.
Yeah.
Before you've drafted an offer, call
Yeah.
and say, hey, help me write this up.
Yeah. Start building the bridge. And, you know, once they know you're interested and you can get some good communication going, then they'll help you craft the offer. I'll say, what's a good close date? Do they need a lease back?
To Ian's point real quick,
Yeah.
let's say out of 10, how many agents do a great job? How many listing agents do a great job of working with you to not only help their client, but to make working together more seamless?
Not as many as you'd like. I mean, most of them are
1, 2,
signed
3,
in the
4.
yard. And
Give us a number. Give us a number.
hope for some phone calls.
Well,
I'd
here-
say 3 out of 10.
Here's the thing.
3 out of 10.
Of all the people on our team, David is actually going to be the most generous
Yeah.
with the industry at a whole.
Yeah.
We had a great training call in our coaching group one time where
Never
I
forget
just
this.
knew that David was going to be like, no one, they're all idiots. And he was like, I don't know, like 8 out of 10. I was like, what? But he was, you know, David's just an unbelievably kind and nice person and doesn't ever want to say anything bad about someone, which most of our team is that way.
So that being
is a huge
said,
advantage.
let's jump to Megan. Megan, what do you think?
So I've actually had a couple of agents completely shoot themselves in the foot in these situations. So
Yeah.
there was multiple offers, and I think ours was the highest, and she was worried that it wouldn't appraise. But I told her if we weren't the best or the most appealing offer, that we would adjust or just to come back to me, and we would figure it out. Instead of coming back to me, she picked another offer, ended up getting $5,000 less for her client, and we would have been able to work it out.
Right.
So.
And that stuff happens all the time. And the other thing that happens all the time is, you know, it's like, honey, I've been in the business 30 years. I don't do that. You send me your best offer and I'll let you know. It's like, oh, you're so sharp. Mumble in my head, wanting to throw a chair through the window. You know, like you think you're so darn smart, and I am literally saying, here's a blank check. Would you like to draw a number on it? And you're saying, that's a dumb question. Like, excuse what?
And by the way, if you're a buyer's specialist listening to this, and a lot of people work both sides of it,
Sure.
right? It goes both ways.
Right.
Jeremy had somebody that he was working with, and they submitted an offer to him, and it had some really, really weird thing in it. I don't remember what it was. And Jeremy asked them about it, and the response was, it's called negotiation.
Right.
And Jeremy's like,
Oh, teach
it's
me.
not.
Teach
Like,
me your
that's
ways.
not what it is.
It's actually in the wrong paragraph. That's what it
It
is.
made no sense.
Yeah. But that's the game we play. And let's just step back for a second and do a little life lesson here. People who are the most defensive and least willing to engage in conversation are the least confident. They're the least equipped. And they're afraid to engage in that because they don't know what to say. They don't know, if I say that, is it going to hurt my client? Am I going to mess up? Am I going to cross some boundary? So I'll just say nothing. And on our team, we have a core value called running into the fire. Right? Is there a challenge or a problem? If so, let's run at it and solve it instead of curling up in the fetal position in the corner and hoping someone else fixes it while the whole building burns to the ground.
It's also called fight or flight, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the same thing.
And the point I'm making is so many of these agents, they don't know what to do. So they sort of run and hide and hope that you or someone else fixes it, or that no one notices that the kitchen's on fire, right? And so, you know, to Megan's point, it's like they shoot themselves and they burn their own house down by saying, like, you figure it out. Okay, well, you didn't solve the problem, so I'm just going to avoid the problem and go over here with another offer, which is not as good for my client, certainly not even as good for the agent. They make less, the seller makes less, everyone gets hurt, but no one knows except for him or her, right? And they just ignore it and brush it under the rug, and they forget. And then they go tell their friends that they're the best option for you to buy or sell a house with. When if they were being both intellectually and simply logically honest with themselves, they would know that they are a liar. They are a deceiver. They are misleading friends and family. They are not the best option for their friends and family to buy or sell with, right? So if you're tuning in, we'll wrap up here in a minute, but we've remained relatively low-hanging fruit so far, right? Like, call people back, actually have a conversation, build a little rapport, you know, be strategic. When given an opportunity like, help me help you. What kind of offer would you like me to write up? Take advantage of that opportunity. That's like a softball underhand tossed over the plate. Swing big, buddy. Go for the fences, you know, take a rip at it. But What are a few things that are a little bit more strategic and a little bit more clever as a buyer agent that you've seen some really good listing agents do? I can think of a couple if you don't have one on the tip of your tongue right here. But what are some things you've seen or heard them do that you've thought, he or she's pretty darn sharp?
Man, I don't know if I have one on the tip of my tongue.
I can
recently.
I can think of a couple of things around multiple offer situations where most agents just say, well, highest and best by 5 o'clock. Or, I think we already got one. We're going to go. You're like, are you kidding? Hold on a second. Tell me to compete with you, right? Where really, really good agents will say, hey, very good. I tell you what, we've got some that are really strong that my seller would probably be really happy with taking. So, if you want to send one in, go ahead. I need it by 5 o'clock tomorrow, but it's okay if you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And what they're communicating is, I don't need another offer. Like, we've already hit this thing out of the park. If you want to send me another one, send it big, send it really, really clean. That doesn't happen very much, right?
No.
But every once in a while when it happens, you kind of stomp your foot and you're like, dang it, they're pretty good, Or how about this one? Megan, tell us what happens in this situation. You do what David was talking about, right? Before you write an offer, you call the listing agent and you're like, hey, just want to check in with you, kind of see what your seller situation is. Tell me a little bit about them and what they're looking for. What would make this a really great deal for them? And what you're hoping they say is, well, it's not all about money. They're in a hurry. A faster closing would be great. Honestly, if they could leave some of that patio furniture and just not have to deal with it, that would be helpful. And you're hoping you can go back and write up an offer that says, leave the patio furniture. We can close in 15 days and not have to compete on price, right? What do you think, feel, and do when you call and ask those questions and you say, hey, tell me about your seller, what could you do? And they say, hey, they're super flexible. They're not in a hurry. They've bought another home, but it's all cash and they're not going to leave here until it's sold. So, they're really in a great shape on this one. Just, send us your highest and best. What is your first thought when a listing agent does that?
My first thought is, okay, so this is all going to be about money.
Right.
Like, it's going to be the highest price. There's not they don't need a lease back. There's no time frame that I can make appealing. So that's what I initially think. But then I'll try to dig further and be like, well, okay, so timing's not an issue. What's appealing? What's something that would stand out to you on an offer? Right.
So to break that down, your first response is like, dang it, good agent. They didn't give me anything, like no home runs. They didn't drop the ball and over communicate and tell me something they shouldn't have told me. Like, well, the husband's already living in Ohio and they're just waiting for the house to sell so they can move up and be a family again. You're like, man, you should not have told me that. I'm not trying to destroy your family, but obviously I know there's some super high motivation there, right? So they've given you none of that. Your first response is like, okay, they're not gonna lay down and give me a grand slam opportunity. So let me keep digging, right? But again, none of the things we're talking about today require extensive training or are unbelievably difficult. They require focus and being heads up and maybe listening to a podcast like this once or twice and then thinking, I'm going to incorporate that into my communication pattern when I get offers.
But a part of it too is like, how do you want to be treated, right? Mm-hmm. If you're on the other side of this conversation, what would you expect and want from an agent? You don't want somebody that's not responsive. You don't want somebody that's not going to call you, not going to give you information. It's super common sense, and yet people don't do it.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, most of our business is pretty common sense, right? I mean, we definitely have, and certainly in our module training and things, we've got some nuance and some kind of deeper level strategy, right? We've got some really cool proprietary stuff, right? But you may not even, you may not implement any of that until you implement a lot of what we're talking about today, which is like, if you slow down and think, that's a pretty common sense response, right? Like,
yeah.
Instead of saying, oh my gosh, just send us an offer, they'll take anything, you say, hey, we're really confident in our pricing, send something over. We'd love to review it. I want to make sure everyone gets a fair shot at this. So if you could get it in by 5 o'clock tomorrow, I can be positive that I will get that in front of my seller.
Well, we just interviewed somebody yesterday for a role on our team, and what did he say about the tests? He says, I'm not saying that they're like really easy and watered down, and we're like, no, you can say that.
Say that. It's
but
okay.
He goes, I'm really surprised at how it's just common sense stuff in there.
Right.
It's not like challenging questions. It's common sense information. And we're like, right. I mean, it's a big part of it.
So before we wrap up real quick, let's tease a future episode where we will focus all on the buyer side. But knowing that both of you are at a buyer a week pace or more, that you can sign a buyer a week or more on average if you want to. And sometimes you do want to, sometimes you don't, which is great, but you know that you can. For someone out there that's listening that feels like there's no freaking way, like that just sounds insane. There may be earlier point in their career, or they've been doing this for 25 years and they've always done okay selling, 10, 12, 15, 18 homes a year. And now we're saying, if you want to you could go out and sign 52 buyers and close all or some of those or whatever. You're totally in control. Just talk for a second, fairly quickly, about your mindset when you got started versus where you are today about being able to do something like that.
I've just learned over the years to talk to a lot of people. We talk a lot about that here. Todd talks, it's not just people here at the office. It's being at church or being at where you work out or my street. I've been able to befriend all my neighbors the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm going to get 2 or 3 listings just from there, bring it into the team. So for me, it's been, open houses are great. They can bring in buyers for sure, but it's writing notes. I write a lot of notes to people. And even if they're not thinking about buying or selling, you never know who's going to save that note and call you in a year or two.
Right.
And so you got to be in it for the long haul. You got to, you got to talk to a lot of people, and it'll happen.
Right. So I put this in my book, but it's been in our wall and on handouts on our team for years and years. But I think we call them the 12 super simple old school money making sales strategies, and they're all like unbelievably common sense. Number one is talk to a lot of people.
Right.
Obviously, David is tied into a source of leads and appointments that are set for him, and buy sides of our marketing specialist listing deals that come over to him and things like that too. So there's some systems and structure behind that for sure. But none of that works if you don't show up every day and talk to a lot of people and work hard. Now, David makes a lot of his hard work look like fun because he thinks of it as having a lot of conversations, right? But it's not easy, but it's a simple strategy, if that makes sense. It's not all that complicated to say, I need to talk to a bunch of people, and I haven't been talking to enough people lately, so let me turn that up. I've been talking to a ton of people, and my pipeline's really full. So let's kick it over to Megan real quick, and really the same question. Compared to where your mindset was, day one, month one, year one, to where it is now, you were once at a place where being able to take a buyer week probably seemed insane, and now you're at a place where you can do that. What's that journey been like? What's changed in your thinking for you to come to that place?
I think in the beginning it was a little overwhelming, and I was it kind of just looked like a big scary goal. But then when you kind of get your momentum going and you start working transactions and meeting people, and it just kind of catapults you forward. You just don't stop. You just stay in motion. And
well, and late in your first year, early in your second year, not because you chose to, because life happened, you sort of did stop a little bit in your momentum, and you kind of had to rebuild a little bit, right?
Yep.
And I think it's great to be really honest with people. And like, no one's life and business is perfect. David had ankle surgery last month, and it's been a really annoying, 4 or 5 weeks already, right? Now it's slowed him down a little bit. He's still going to close stupid amounts of business, but he's had friends and family and team members driving him around, all kinds of stuff. And Megan had, beyond her personal life stuff happen that drew her attention away from businesses more than she wanted it to, and that's slowed her down a little bit. And then she came back with a fury and is killing it, and she's winning Agent of the Month a lot. But the point is, what you said that I think will translate to people listening is don't stop.
And mindset too.
Well, that's what I was going to wrap up with. So to wrap up the show for today, I'll tell you the biggest difference as someone who's been here responsible for training and equipping and resourcing you guys. The biggest difference is at some point you crossed over that line of believing that you could.
Yeah.
Now, people all over North America are listening to this podcast, and they're going to do this differently than we do it. Some of you will go over to listingaweek.com and you'll buy our Listing a Week training, or you'll buy the Buyer a Week training, or you'll just go there and get the free stuff, and you'll watch podcasts and listen for free, and that's fine. There's free stuff there and there's paid stuff there. Listingaweek.com, listingaweek.com. But virtually none of you will do this exactly the way David or Megan did it or do it, right? Now, you can adopt a lot of our stuff, but the fact of the matter is the biggest thing that changed was your thinking and your confidence and your sort of mental momentum, right? Now, a lot of that comes from having a team that supports you and reminds you, encourages you, and picks you up when you're down. But whether you're out there as a solo agent, a team member, a team leader, a brokerage owner, a referral agent, whatever, the biggest gap you need to bridge is going from thinking that number sounds crazy to thinking I could totally do that. And it doesn't mean that will be easy. That's foolish thinking. Thinking it's going to take hard work, but it's not terribly complicated and I can do it is the biggest difference between those who do and those who don't. The only other thing I would say is some don't even try. But again, the mindset is what's going to allow you to try to say, okay, I'm going for it, right? I think I can, so I'm going to go for it. And then if we can ever be a resource, an encouragement, a support, a coach for you, head over to alistingaweek.com, get a bunch of free stuff there. And then if you're interested, check out some of the paid stuff. We'd love to help you if the time is right. If it's not, keep taking advantage of the free stuff. You can check out our A Listing a Week program and our A Buyer a Week program. And this episode has made me think, let's just do a full Buyer a Week episode sometime soon. So thanks for tuning in, checking it out. Comment below if there's a question, if we said something silly or used the right term, or you think we're full of bull, or if there's something you'd like us to cover on a future episode, drop that in the comments, like and subscribe, and head over to alistingaweek.com for a bunch of free resources and obviously some options for paid stuff too. alistingaweek.com. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody say your goodbyes.
Later.
Cheerio.
Goodbye.
Over and out.